I knew the ship was sinking when Kelly, freshly promoted and glowing like she'd invented the wheel, walked into the Monday sink, slapped her caramel macchiato on the table like a damn gavel, and said, "Let's be real. Anyone with fingers can push buttons. We'll have this place streamlined in a month." That was the first time she spoke directly about my job, while I was still sitting there, coffee halfway to my mouth, trying not to choke. I'd spent the last 6 years building the entire reporting infrastructure that made this circus look like a functioning company. Forecasting, analytics, burn rate visibility, supplier metrics, even the weekly "Kelly's looking good" slide the CEO like so much. All of it lived on pipelines I wrote, automated, and babysat like a damn NICU nurse. But sure, push buttons. Everyone around the table did that corporate half-laugh, that breathy noise people make when they don't want to be seen picking sides. I didn't laugh. I didn't flinch. I just made a mental note that I had about 30 days before she tried to cut me loose and repurpose my corpse into a cost optimization story. Quick pause. If you've made it this far, do me one favor. About 97% of people listen to these stories without subscribing, but if this hits close to home, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and help us keep dropping these bombs. You keep watching, we'll keep burning bridges for ya. Back to Kelly and her radiant idiocy. She'd been VP for less than a week when she called her first restructuring huddle. We were barely 5 minutes into the agenda when she said it. I looked at our org chart and, yeah, we've got duplication everywhere. Redundancies in data. We need to simplify. And by simplify, she meant gut the team. I watched her eyes flick across our names like she was assigning seats on the Titanic. Then she landed on me. "You're the senior data lead, right?" I gave a slow nod. She smirked like she was waiting for me to salute. "Great. I'll need full documentation on everything you do. Pipelines, scripts, dependencies, outputs, whatever nerdy magic you've got behind the curtain. Standardize it all. We're cross-training everyone, and I want to make sure I can pick it up if needed." Pick it up. Like it was a F-King plunger. She turned to the HR rep, scribbling like she was transcribing the Dead Sea Scrolls, and added, "Let's make it mandatory for all legacy staff. Knowledge transfer. You know the drill." Translation: train your replacements while smiling like it's a promotion. I sat there nodding like a bobblehead, but inside, something calcified. 6 years of never missing a deploy. 6 years of waking up at 3:58 a.m. to make sure the 4 o'clock batch process clean. 6 years of silently catching errors that would have had our CEO explaining $3.2 million discrepancies to angry investors. And this woman, this overperfumed LinkedIn influencer in a blazer 2 sizes too tight, thought she could learn it if needed? I didn't say a word. Didn't argue. Just smiled like I always did. She thought I was passive. Disposable. Sweet dreams, Kelly. 2 days after the streamlining speech, my calendar blew up like a piñata full of pink slips. Kelly had booked back-to-back one-on-ones with every analyst on my team. By Thursday, 2 of them were gone. Reassigned to a digital transformation squad she made up on the spot. She called it Project Eagle. Because of course she did. Ben and Mira were good, newish but smart, curious, dependable. The kind of people you'd trust to hold a production push while you ducked out to the dentist. Now they were gone. Just like that. Sent off to optimize dashboard agility. Or some other buzzword salad Kelly had spit out while twirling a pen she didn't know how to click properly. When I confronted her, in the most polished, corporate palatable way I could muster, she gave me this glazed, dismissive smile like I'd just asked her to bring back the fax machine. "Oh, don't be dramatic," she chirped. "It's not like they're being fired. I just think they'll thrive in a more vision-centric environment. You're still the SME, right? Share the love. Train up the rest." Train up the rest. My new team now consisted of an overworked intern, a contractor who treated deadlines like polite suggestions, and a Slack channel full of tumbleweeds. Meanwhile, Kelly kept referring to herself as the data steward, like she'd been knighted by the SQL gods. I tried playing ball. I really did. I gave them access to sanitized versions of the pipeline logic. I built onboarding decks. I hosted brown bags explaining how upstream vendor data flowed through the ETL process into our financial forecast systems. I drew little arrows, color-coded dependencies, even added jokes to the slides to keep people awake. The intern laughed. The contractor didn't show. Kelly? She never once showed up to those sessions. Not even to lurk. I asked her if she had questions about the automation scheduler. The thing that actually triggered the 4 a.m. report builds, the one nested inside our credential vault like a sleeping dragon. She blinked at me. I assumed IT handles that. I don't need to know every little nut and bolt, I just need the car to drive. Then she laughed. Besides, once I've got the doc packet from you, I'll be able to run it all myself. That was her favorite thing to say. I'll be running it all myself soon. Every time I heard it, I had to clench my jaw to keep from snorting. She said it like she was learning to knit. Like there was no difference between replicating a live reporting architecture and following a damn YouTube tutorial. She started forwarding me articles, Beginner's Guide to SQL, Data Visualization Tips for Executives, How to Automate Your Analytics in 5 Easy Steps. I think she genuinely believed she was halfway to replacing me with a Canva template and a bottle of wine. I stopped sleeping. Not because I was scared. Because I was furious. Not the loud, table-flipping kind of fury. No, this was quieter. Denser. The kind that settles in your bones when you realize you're being erased in slow motion by someone who wouldn't last 5 minutes alone with a command prompt. And yet, I kept smiling. That fake, practiced sure thing Kelly smile. Because I wasn't just watching her bury herself. I was handing her the shovel. It was around 2 a.m. when I cracked open the shell of the old scripts. Not the polished ones. Not the sanitized training material I'd gift-wrapped for Kelly like a data-themed diaper bag. I'm talking about the real bones. The bash routines, chained cron triggers, credential vault fallbacks, all stitched together with the kind of logic that only makes sense when you've been waking up before sunrise for 6 years straight and building while the office sleeps. I hadn't looked at this folder in ages. It was my private cathedral of chaos. No documentation. No breadcrumbs. Just raw function named like inside jokes. Naptime_killswitch.sh, frankensched.py, blameit.bat. Beneath it all was the ghost key. A credential token I'd generated back when our CISO was still trying to block TikTok at the firewall. It lived outside the normal SSO flow, tied to a legacy dev account nobody even tracked anymore. And it was the last domino in the whole damn stack. I leaned back, staring at the wall of cascading green text. The scripts weren't malicious. They didn't erase anything. Didn't corrupt. They just ran. Smooth. Dependable. Triggered every morning at 4 a.m. Compiled data from 6 internal systems, calculated burn rates, vendor drift, client SLA metrics. Spat out crystal clear dashboards by 7. The execs had no idea where any of it came from. They thought Tableau was magic and Excel had a soul. I built it all alone. No one else ever asked how. I could have made a clean break. Could have nuked the scripts, deleted the token, submitted a final exit memo like a good little soldier, and walked out with a branded hoodie and a sad Starbucks card. I could have handed over every string and watched them fumble it, but recover eventually. Then came the meeting. I wasn't in it, but I was in the Slack. Kelly forgot the channel was public. She was riffing with some mid-level director from finance, the one who calls himself a data whisperer because he knows how to pivot a table. They were joking about headcount. Honestly, Kelly typed, he's lucky we didn't replace him sooner. Legacy staff always cling the hardest when they know the axe is coming face with tears of joy, face with tears of joy. And that was it. Not the insult. Not even the laugh. It was the certainty behind it. The way she wrote, like she was already rewriting history. Like she was the one who'd been grinding at 3 a.m. when the January snowstorm killed our AWS gateway, and I rebuilt the pipeline in my car outside a Waffle House. Lucky. I remember just sitting there, staring at that message. Something in me snapped. Not loud, not messy. Just decisive. Like closing a folder you know you'll never open again. I stood up, walked to the break room, poured a mug of coffee I didn't need, and watched the snow fall against the tinted windows. When I sat back down, I opened the ghost key file. No one had touched it in years. It didn't live in our Git repo. It wasn't tied to Jira. There was no mention of it in the documentation packet I diligently prepared. And as I stared at the blinking cursor, A thought rolled through my mind, slow, clear, calm. Let her run it all herself. The Sweet Dreams folder was a masterpiece of plausible completeness. I spent 3 days assembling it. Tables of contents, color-coded flowcharts, pseudocode walkthroughs, links to sanitized repos, even a snappy executive summary that Kelly could skim while waiting for her oat milk to froth. It looked like everything. It felt like everything. But it wasn't. Not even close. Every diagram had just enough abstraction to seem informative without being dangerous. Every code comment was 2 shades vaguer than useful. And right there, dead center in the deployment schedule, was a neat little lie by omission. No mention of the legacy automation trigger. No reference to the credential that made it all tick. The 4 a.m. job was shown on a diagram, yes, but with a note. System scheduled via standard task runner. Ambiguous enough to be believable. Technically true. And totally useless. I could already hear her in my head, 2 weeks from now. I followed your instructions and it didn't run. Well, no shit, Kelly. That key, that hidden credential nested like a Russian doll inside a deprecated system alias? It was mine. Tied to my personal token. One I'd never documented. Never shared. I didn't do it to be clever. Back then, I just needed it to work. Needed the pipeline to survive the revolving door of contractors and reorgs and budget freezes. So I buried it deep and moved on. 6 years later, it was the only thing between them and silence. HR called it knowledge transfer. Kelly called it operational resilience. I called it what it was, closure. I wasn't bitter. Not anymore. I wasn't angry or even smug. I was just done. Fully, finally done. I submitted the packet on a Friday. Made a little ceremony of it. PDF'd the whole thing, zipped it, and named the folder sweetdreams_vfinal.zip. No version history, no change logs, just the final, perfect gift of superficial clarity. I attached it to an email with 2 lines. Per request. Attached is full documentation of reporting infrastructure and support routines. Let me know if anything's unclear. Kelly replied within 4 minutes. Looks great. Already forwarding to the IT team. Appreciate the hustle, smiley face. Smiley face and all. I stared at that email for a long time. Not because it bothered me, but because it didn't. It confirmed everything I already knew. She hadn't read a word. She saw pretty diagrams and bullet points and thought she'd captured the kingdom. I leaned back in my chair, cracked my knuckles, and closed every file. I didn't delete the ghost key. Didn't touch a thing. The machine was still humming, quiet, obedient, predictable. But I knew it wouldn't hum for long. Not after I walked. And when it stopped, when the reports failed to arrive and the dashboard started blinking blank, they wouldn't know where to look. They'd search the Sweet Dreams folder. And they'd find nothing but surface. I wore my nicest blouse to the exit interview. The navy one with the clean lines and the rolled cuffs, just enough to say, I'm not bitter, while still whispering, UF get up. HR had booked a conference room with too much sunlight, and the woman facilitating it, Kristen or Kirsten or some other overpolished vowel blend, greeted me like I was heading off to college, not being phased out by someone who thought cron jobs were a side dish. Kelly showed up late, of course, teeth bared in a press release smile, stilettos clacking like a countdown. We'll miss you so much, she said, which was corporate for please vanish before the mess hits the fan. I handed over my badge, my company-issued laptop, and the external drive I'd preloaded with the complete documentation packet. She didn't even plug it in. Just tossed it onto her leather folio like a receipt from brunch. You've set us up for success, she said. The team's in a great place now. I'm glad to hear that, I replied. Hope you sleep well. Those 4 a.m. reports really run themselves. The silence that followed was small but surgical. She didn't catch it, just laughed and said, Oh, automation's the future. Like I hadn't just handed her a ticking time bomb with a grin and a handshake. We took a photo. HR insisted. For the newsletter. I smiled with my mouth, not my eyes. She stood too close. I could smell her perfume, sharp and citrusy, like a warning sign. Then it was done. 6 years, reduced to a 15-minute farewell, and a budget line cleared for strategic staffing realignment. I went home, kicked off my shoes, poured a whiskey, and opened my personal laptop. The screen glowed soft and familiar as I navigated to the vault. The ghost key sat there, active, obedient, ready. My mouse hovered for a moment. Not because I was hesitating, but because I wanted to feel it. The weight. The decision. Then I clicked. 1 token revoked. No alarms. No fireworks. Just a quiet, irreversible severing of the cord. Like pulling a plug on a machine you built with your bare hands, and watching the lights flicker out without protest. Later that night, I didn't sleep. I didn't need to. I sat on the couch with my legs curled under me, laptop open, watching the terminal tick toward 4 a.m. The process was scheduled. The system would wait exactly 30 seconds for the credential. I counted them aloud. 25, 26, 27. At 4 hours and 30 seconds, the job failed. No retry. No escalation. I opened the internal report viewer, refreshed the dashboard. Blank. No forecasts. No metrics. Just a little spinning wheel that read, loading data. I leaned back, exhaled slow, and let it hit me. Not joy, not vengeance. Just peace. The kind of clean you only feel after you've taken something broken and finally stopped pretending it could be saved. At 4:01 a.m., the world was quiet. And I slept like the dead. Monday morning, 8 a.m. sharp, Kelly waltzed into the executive meeting like a TED Talk was about to break out. She had that caffeinated bounce in her step. The one that said she thought this week was her victory lap. New director title. New wardrobe. New team built on the bones of mine. She had no idea she was walking into a vacuum. The CEO, Harold, who normally treated these Monday meetings like DMV visits, looked surprisingly alert. Maybe it was because Q4 numbers were due. Maybe it was because investors were circling like buzzards. Either way, he didn't even offer pleasantries. Just tapped his tablet twice and asked, "Where's the burn rate?" Kelly blinked. "It should be in the dashboard." Everyone looked at the big screen mounted to the wall. The dashboard was open. It just wasn't doing anything. No metrics. No charts. No spend to revenue graph. Just gray tiles and little spinning circles. "Maybe refresh?" she offered, smiling too wide. Someone in finance said, "I did. 4 times." Kelly's smile faltered. "Could be an API hiccup," she said, looking around like she expected a developer to materialize out of the drywall. The CTO leaned forward, arms crossed. "No scheduled outages. If it was on our side, we'd see the logs." "Well, then it's Data's fault," she snapped, a little too fast. "They own the source files." Except they didn't. Not anymore. Not since she reassigned the team. Ben and Mira were busy building dashboard prototypes for Project Eagle. The intern had been told not to touch anything legacy. And the contractor? He was in Bali. On vacation. By 8:15, Kelly was texting people under the table. By 8:20, she called IT. IT looped in Data Ops. Data Ops said everything looked fine but the job never ran. "What job?" she asked. A long pause. "The 4 a.m. batch job that builds the warehouse tables." "Isn't that automated?" It was. "But it's not running." "What do you mean it's not running?" "It's always run." No one had an answer. Around 8:37 a.m., while Kelly was frantically whispering with a sysadmin about escalating to cloud support, I was sitting on my back porch with a steaming mug of coffee and a pair of fuzzy socks. I hadn't even opened my laptop yet. Didn't need to. My phone buzzed. It was Mira. "WTF did you do?" I smiled just a little. Took a sip. Then came another. "CEO is red. Kelly looks like she's gonna cry. Harold asked if we've been hacked." And finally a third. They brought in an IT guy with a laptop. He asked where the main script lives. She said probably in the doc folder. I almost choked. I set the phone down and looked out at the trees. October was starting to burn the leaves golden, and the air had that crisp, firewood smell. My dog dozed at my feet. Somewhere inside, the laundry buzzed. And back in that meeting room, Chaos wore perfume and a pantsuit, pretending everything was fine while the clock devoured her authority minute by minute. She hadn't been sabotaged. No one had planted a virus. She'd just never learned to look under the hood. And now, for the first time in her career, Kelly had no one left to blame but the mirror. By Tuesday morning, the panic had evolved. Less shouting, more quiet urgency with clipped syllables and caffeine-slicked desperation. Kelly had gone from "this is a minor glitch" to "we need every resource on this now," in under 24 hours. IT brought in a pair of contractors from a partner firm. Guys who looked like they charged by the keystroke. Bald, humorless, efficient. They plugged in, asked a few baseline questions, then went completely silent for 45 minutes. That's when the real bleeding started. One of them, Bryce or Blake or something equally forgettable, leaned back and said flatly, "None of this was transferred. There's no job handoff. No pipeline access. No cedulero ownership. No credential registry entry. What system did the automation run under?" Kelly blinked. "The standard one? I don't know. Wasn't it all covered in the documentation?" Blake raised an eyebrow. "We've been through that folder 3 times. Nothing in there triggers anything." She stammered. "There's a diagram. It says system scheduled via standard task runner." "Right," he said, voice flat as drywall. "That's not a real thing." The room went quiet. The CTO, who had been lurking like a shark behind his MacBook, finally spoke. Who last had full control over the automation stack? One of the IT analysts pulled up a credential audit log. The room leaned in. It was my name, my token, my access trail, my custom alias inside the vault, linked to a deprecated but active service account with just one permission. Execute job at 4 a.m. daily. That's her old senior analyst, the IT lead said, scrolling. She left Friday. Kelly's face went pale. No one thought to migrate this? Kelly opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. I was told we had all the documentation. I didn't think. You didn't ask, someone muttered. No one owned it, but everyone heard it. That's when Harold stood up, the CEO. He'd been mostly quiet until now, stewing in his leather chair like a dormant volcano. He didn't shout. He just asked, in a voice too calm to be safe, "You told me this was plug and play, that you could handle it." Kelly nodded slowly. I thought I could. The processes were legacy. I was simplifying. I followed standard best practices. I didn't know it was still tied to her token." Harold's jaw clenched. "Did you ever run it yourself? Even once?" Silence. "Did you ask her how it worked?" Another silence. This one longer. Embarrassing. That's when the CFO's assistant knocked on the glass and opened the door a crack. "Sorry," she said. "Investor Relations is calling again. They want the updated Q4 forecast now. They've called 3 times." Harold didn't look away from Kelly. "Tell them we're finalizing the numbers." But now, the door shut. Kelly sat frozen, every drop of confidence visibly draining from her. She tried to speak again, some half-formed sentence about standard protocol, but the CTO cut her off. "You didn't lose a report. You lost our foundation." From my living room, I watched the news ticker scroll past the bottom of a muted financial broadcast. Regional logistics firm misses earnings report. Spokesperson cites data pipeline complications. Spokesperson. Not executive. Not director. Kelly's name wasn't mentioned once. The emergency board meeting was called for Thursday morning. Not that Kelly called it, Harold did. And when a CEO uses words like emergency and non-negotiable attendance in the subject line, the suits show up. Cameras off, mics hot, all pretending not to be seething from their beach homes and lake cabins. Kelly logged in early. Full makeup, blazer sharp enough to slice bread, not a hair out of place. She was trying to manifest control with eyeliner and posture, but the fear was creeping through. You could hear it in her voice, too fast, too bright. She opened with a 5-minute deck titled Root Cause Analysis and Rapid Recovery Framework. It was corporate jazz hands, meaningless buzzwords, vague action items, and a heavy helping of unforeseen vendor dependency issues. No one smiled. Then came the finance team. They didn't need a deck. They had fury and receipts. The VP of Finance, who had never once remembered my name during my 6 years there, opened with, "Because of the reporting failure, we missed our submission window for the Q4 revision clause with WearTech. They pulled the discount tier." Everyone sat up. That clause was worth 7 figures. The controller followed. We also gave incomplete inventory data to Larchmont. They flagged it as a breach of SLA and are withholding payment until reconciliation. The air in that Zoom call went icy. Harold gestured to the interim CIO. Some grizzled consultant they'd yanked from retirement in New Hampshire. He spoke plainly. The entire reporting architecture was built on a credentialed script tied to a single employee. That credential was revoked upon their departure. There was no redundancy, no failover, no documented escalation path. The automation lived and died with her. He let that hang, then added, the employee did submit a documentation packet. It omitted all information about the automation key. Legal has confirmed it wasn't required under the severance agreement. The general counsel, already present, nodded. Confirmed. No clause obligated the employee to disclose proprietary routines not formally documented during employment. The contract doesn't cover it. Kelly finally snapped. But that's ridiculous. Everyone knew she handled automation. IT should have had visibility. The CIO gave her a look that could have stripped paint. I interviewed IT. No one ever had access. And when asked directly, you told your team it was button pushing and that you'd figure it out. That's in writing. Kelly's mouth opened, but Harold raised a hand. Enough. He didn't yell. He just sounded tired. Like someone reading the same bedtime story to a kid who never learned the lesson. There were gaps in leadership, he said slowly. Dangerous gaps. You presented yourself as operationally prepared. You weren't. And it cost us money, trust, and clients. Kelly's voice was barely a whisper. So what are you saying? The board chair, who'd stayed silent until now, finally spoke. Effective immediately, you are relieved of your role as senior director. We appreciate your service. It wasn't a firing. It was a strategic erasure. Kelly sat frozen, lips parted, unable to form a sentence. No one thanked her. No one said best of luck. They just moved on to the next item on the agenda. Somewhere in a folder she probably never opened, sat my final line of code. A single conditional statement, time-stamped, silent, and untriggered. Kelly thought she'd inherited a throne. Turns out it was a trapdoor. There's a little cafe 3 blocks from my apartment. Brick walls, no Wi-Fi. The kind of place where the barista remembers your name and nobody wears a badge. I sit by the window now. Most mornings, laptop open, cappuccino cooling just enough to sip. My hair's longer. My inbox is quiet. And for the first time in years, no one's breathing down my neck about pivot tables or urgent alignment decks built on someone else's fire drill. I build clean now. Modular. Transparent. Every system I design has documentation, so clear it could teach itself to a golden retriever. My new clients listen. They ask questions. They pay on time. No PowerPoint decks, no ego inflation, no perfume-soaked execs promising they'll circle back while shoving your work under the rug. On the screen in front of me is a dashboard. Not flashy, not bloated, just pure intuitive flow. Sales projections from a small eco-supply chain startup. The founder emailed me last week. I finally understand where our money goes. You're a miracle worker. I told her I wasn't a miracle, just someone who wasn't afraid to explain things. My phone buzzes. It's Mira. Kelly's officially out. New director starts Monday. Guess what? They're asking if you consult. I stare at the message for a second. Then I type. Sweet of them to ask. Tell them I'm sleeping just fine. I hit send, lean back, and smile without bitterness. There's no need to return. I've already left my signature. In the silence. In the blank dashboards. In the lessons no one wanted until they were too late. Kelly never did figure out how to run those reports. But she was right about one thing. She said she could do my job in her sleep. So I let her dream.